Greetings, welcome to Facts About Everything. I am your host, James Egan. If I asked you, what was King Arthur's sword called? Pretty much everyone go, it's obviously Excalibur. There's a movie called that. In the original myth of Arthur, where the character is actually called Ambrosius Aurelianus, the sword is called Caliburn. And that is the first misconception about history. Let's dive in. Okay, let's start off with misconceptions about ancient Egypt. When Tutenkhamun's tomb was unearthed, the mummy's curse killed off all the archaeologists. The inscription, "They who enter this sacred tomb shall swift be visited by wings of death," never existed. That was in the movie. The mummy didn't come back to life either. But the archaeologists died, right? Yes, Carnarvon did die shortly after the tomb was opened, but he was very ill before he went to Egypt. You may have heard that the security guard who guarded King Tut died in the museum. And that's true, he did die. 50 years later. So either the curse is nonsense or that mummy is taking his sweet time exacting his revenge. In ancient Egypt, slaves were buried with the pharaohs. Of the 300 pharaohs known, only 2 of them had their slaves buried with them. Napoleon had his men shoot the nose off the Sphinx. Napoleon didn't invade Egypt until 1798. We have known the Sphinx's nose has been missing since at least 1738, when a Danish explorer named Frederick Louis Norden drew the nose of Sphinx when he passed by. The missing nose was caused by weather erosion. By the way, if I say anybody like Napoleon Bonaparte, King Tutenkhamun, and that piques your interest, let me know and I'll do a video about those people. All ancient Egyptians shaved their entire bodies. This only applied to the nobles. Now let's look at ancient Rome. The ancient Romans walked around wearing togas all the time. Togas were too posh for casual wear. They were only worn during ceremonial times. Only the emperor and his generals wore them at all times. A vomitorium was a room that Romans used to vomit in when they were having banquets so they could continue eating. I read this in my history book in school. My history book even specifically said ancient Romans would make themselves vomit with an ostrich feather. This is a total fabrication. A vomitorium was actually a passage below or behind a tier of seats in an amphitheater or stadium. They are still common in theaters today. Ancient Rome had epic parties and banquets. Many depictions of Roman banquets on television will show a room filled with an immeasurable amount of food and wine. However, Roman laws were tight about banquet budgets. If there was too much food, it was likely some of it would rot. The empire couldn't risk their soldiers suffering from food poisoning and would never waste a large amount of food. Julius Caesar was the strongest proponent of these laws and would often stop banquets that he believed were overindulgent. Gladiators and the Colosseum were extremely well built. Nope, they were fatties. The funny thing is, gladiators were very similar to pro wrestlers today, but not in the way you would think. Wrestling nowadays, like the WWE, is show business. Popular wrestlers make customers buy tickets. You can't be popular if you're dead. If the audience liked certain gladiators and the fighters put up a good fight, neither fighter would have to be put to death. So why were they fat? Customers paid for the Colosseum to see one thing: blood. The bigger a person is, the more blood he can spill. Wrestlers in the entertainment business use a technique called blading. This means they will cut themselves in a spot that spills a lot of blood but isn't dangerous. By the way, I can't show you footage of wrestlers doing this because if I show blood, then my video gets demonetized. But I don't have to. You know what blood looks like. Gladiators knew how to spill a lot of blood without hitting vital organs. Once enough blood was spilled, the audience was content even without a death. The fatter you were, the longer you would live for. In the Colosseum, not in real life. All gladiators were men. They were female gladiators. They were called gladiatrixes. In the Colosseum, a thumbs down from the emperor meant put him to death. A thumbs up meant a death sentence. There was no thumbs down. A thumbs up represented a death sentence, and a fist meant that the fighter would be spared. The emperor abided by the Latin expression Pollice compresso, favor judicabator, which means goodwill is decided by the thumb being kept in. Christians were thrown to the lions in the Colosseum. Emperor Nero persecuted Christians before the Colosseum was even built. By the time it was constructed, the majority of Romans were Christians. There's a good few misconceptions just about Julius Caesar. Caesar salad is named after Julius Caesar. Caesar Cardini is a restaurant worker from Tijuana in Mexico. He is the one who created Caesar salad. He actually did it by accident. On a busy Independence Day, his restaurant had little food left, and he cobbled together what ingredients he had left to form the Caesar salad. Julius Caesar is so named because his mother gave birth to him through a Caesarean section. Caesar was born naturally. At the time of Caesar, C-sections did happen, but the mother always died. It has been recorded that Caesar's mother, Aurelia, lived on years after he was born. However, the month of July is derived from his name. Roman emperors were called Caesar. No, this was a title of heritage. The first 4 Roman emperors were called Caesar because they were related to Julius Caesar. The 5th emperor, Galba, took on the title of Caesar because he believed it would make him feel more regal. It didn't work since he was assassinated after only ruling Rome for 7 months. Roman emperors wore wreaths on their head. No, only Caesar did this to hide the fact that he was going bald. In fact, Julius Caesar literally invented the comb-over. That is not a joke. Julius Caesar was the first emperor of Rome. The first emperor of Rome was Augustus. The weird thing is, Julius Caesar was never the emperor of Rome. At the time of his death, the empire didn't even exist yet. When he ruled over Rome, he was known as the Roman dictator, not emperor. The ancient Romans spoke Latin. Ancient Romans spoke Greek originally. They started to speak Latin near the end of the Roman Empire. Now let's look at Vikings. Vikings had horned helmets. They never wore them. They would be completely impractical in battle. Vikings placed their dead on rafts and buried them at sea. Despite what the movie Thor: The Dark World depicted, Vikings bury their dead normally. Who would have ever thought a movie revolving around a thunder god based on a comic book would be inaccurate? I did. Vikings were wild savages. Vikings are perceived as wild savages who raided Europe between the 8th to the 11th century. That is true, but history books tend to leave out a lot of details about the Vikings. They were absurdly vain. They were so particular about their appearance that each Viking had a delicate grooming kit with tiny scissors, razors, ear spoons, and tweezers to keep their beard and hair perfectly groomed. They used to keep this material in their purse, which they would have on them during battle. I would love just one film where you see a Viking with a massive battle axe killing people and he just has a purse on him. Now you might think, well, that doesn't change the fact that they were savages, right? Well, they were a lot more progressive than you'd imagine. Vikings invented arrest warrants, welfare, they outlined a tax system that guaranteed care for the poor, if the families couldn't provide for them if the recipient did not live in Iceland, and they even had child support. Also, the women probably had more rights than almost any other civilization at the time. They could own land, they could engage in battle, they decided who to marry, they had the power in marriage, and they were the one who could decide whether to be divorced or not. Okay, let's just look at some miscellaneous history facts. The Qin Dynasty lasted for centuries. Qin is responsible for building the Great Wall of China, unifying the nation's warring parts into one state, and burying all the terracotta warriors. It was the most powerful dynasty in Chinese history. But it only existed for 15 years. Qin absolutely believed he was immortal because he was so crazy. So when he died, there was no plan to keep the dynasty going. 4 years after he died, the entire dynasty collapsed. The Dark Ages was the worst time in mankind's history, especially in science and technology. People believe that the Dark Ages ended as soon as the Renaissance began, but this was the time when Islam spread astronomy, physics, literature, architecture, medicine, philosophy, and mathematics. Muslims spread their advancements in schools and libraries and created the most detailed social welfare ever at the time. Although this is known as the Dark Ages in Europe, in the Middle East it's known as the Golden Age. If this had spread to Europe, the Renaissance may never have happened. Herbal medicine has existed for 3,000 years. 3,000 years sounds like a long time, but herbal medicine is mind-bogglingly ancient. Herbal medicine has existed for over 50,000 years. Now you might think that's crazy because humans, Homo sapiens, have only existed for 60,000 years. But what's more bizarre is, we didn't create herbal medicine. Herbs were used by our distant cousins, Neanderthals. Now, probably the first thing you're thinking is, well, Neanderthals would just eat it, thinking that was food. No, the chamomile and yarrow that they ate had no nutritional value and tasted awful. Archaeologists have found microscopic particles of these herbs in the skeletons of those Neanderthals that live long lives. These particular Neanderthals knew that the herbs were keeping them alive, or more specifically, creating anti-inflammatory agents. Basically, it was like a prehistoric ibuprofen. And for the final misconception, I need to do a big one, so this is like an misconception within a misconception. Women weren't able to vote until the 1920s. Lily Maxwell was the first woman to vote back in 1867. When she voted, it wasn't illegal for women to do so. It'd be like if a cat was elected mayor. There's no law against it, so they just allowed it. That's not a stupid example, that's an actual thing that happened. Cat mayor, called Stubbs, in Alaska, died recently. Hashtag remember Stubbs. Where was I? Oh yeah, women voting. Back then, women weren't expected to have experience in diplomacy, construction, military, shipping, banking, and so forth. However, Maxwell was a shop owner with her own property, and she had an excellent understanding of business. This got the attention of other businesswomen who also voted. When this got the attention of men in power, only then did they make it illegal for women to vote. It was this incident that kickstarted the Suffragettes movement, which had to fight to get back women's right to vote. Oh man, why did they even stop women from voting? But that's another misconception. They didn't. History books have simplified the suffragette story, so it sounds like women versus men. Many men supported the suffragettes, and many women were against them. Women believed that the suffragettes might tarnish how society viewed their gender, and they should know their place. 20,000 men were involved in the National Men's League in 1912, which heavily supported the suffragettes. Even former slave turned politician Frederick Douglass fought for women to be given the same rights he was often denied. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe. Also, I'd really appreciate if you get like 400 of your friends to subscribe. If you can't do that, just get one. Just get one. Also, if you like these misconceptions, you can check out my books. There's 4 of them, as you can see, or you can buy all of them in one big compendium called the Mega Misconception Book. They're all available on Amazon, in the US, in the United Kingdom, pretty much anywhere in the world, on paperback and Kindle. They're only about 99p on Kindle. If there's any other misconceptions you want me to do a video about, like space or TV or movies, let me know and I'll upload a video as soon as possible. To learn more facts, check out my books on Amazon. They're available on paperback and Kindle. Thanks for watching. See you again.